Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into a local legend that is honestly a perfect case study in folklore and fear, the story of Mike and the Whispering Shadow. We are going to break down exactly how this classic horror narrative is built, how it masterfully ratchets up the suspense, and why its terrifying conclusions still resonate so strongly today. It's a brilliant look at the ultimate cost of ignoring local wisdom. Never enter the woods after sunset. I mean, it's a simple rule, right? But that stark, chilling warning was the absolute law these villagers lived by. It was passed down from generation to generation, specifically to keep kids safe from whatever was lurking in those dense, surrounding forests. In any good cautionary tale, you have a very clear boundary between safety and danger. For this village, that boundary was a non-negotiable curfew tied directly to the setting sun. But of course, in stories like this, rules are basically just waiting to be broken. Part 1. The Village Warning. So let's look at the actual environment here, because you really have to understand the community's mindset to grasp the tragedy of what happens next. The villagers completely believed in these threats. They whispered about strange voices in the dark, travelers vanishing without a single trace, and a literal physical shadow that actively hunted people down. And then contrast that with 13-year-old Mike. Mike was an adventurous kid who fundamentally dismissed every single one of those stories. He didn't just misunderstand the threat, he flat out denied it even existed. And that arrogant skepticism, that is exactly what made him so uniquely vulnerable. Part 2. The Whispering Woods. That total disbelief sets the stage for one chilly autumn evening. Mike was walking past the forest after playing with his friends, and the sun dipped below the horizon. Right there, he's violating the primary rule. He's crossing from his safe, ordinary world into the unknown. And as he's walking, he hears it. A faint voice sounding super distant, almost like it was just the wind, but it was calling his name. Mike, help me. This is the inciting incident. Notice it's not a loud roar or a violent attack. It's a quiet, targeted plea. Mike froze. The trees around him started swaying unnaturally, even though there was zero wind. A cold feeling shot down his spine, that primal instinct screaming at him to just go home. But that psychological lure of hearing his own name, it was too strong. It pulled him right off the safe path. Part 3. The Abandoned Cabin. As pitch darkness settles in, Mike follows that haunting whisper deep into the woods. Eventually, he stumbles upon a hidden, abandoned cabin. Its broken windows are staring out at him like empty eyes. And then, without anyone touching it, the front door slowly creaks open on its own. Mike swallows nervously and steps inside. Now, the visuals in this space are incredible. Everything is covered in dust and cobwebs, right? It looks like it hasn't been touched in years. But right in the center of the room, there's a single burning candle. That contradiction is terrifying. It tells us someone or something is expecting company. And right beside that unnatural light, sitting on a wooden table, is an old, yellowed diary. He opens the diary. The first few pages just talk about the family who used to live there, but the final entry, that's the one that makes his heart completely drop. It's a desperate final warning from the past that lays out the exact rules of the monster hunting him right now. It reads, "The shadow has found us. It lives in the forest and feeds on fear. If you hear it whisper your name, do not turn around." Let's break down that deadly sequence, because this lore operates on highly specific mechanics. Step 1. The shadow initiates contact by whispering your name. Step 2. Turning around acts as the formal invitation. It's the ultimate rule break. And Step 3. It consumes your terror. The absolute tragedy here is that Mike gets this vital, life-saving information just seconds before the trap is sprung. Part 4. The Shadow's Chase. Right after he reads that warning, his breathing stops, because right behind him, his name is whispered. Mike. It's the ultimate test of willpower. But driven by sheer, overwhelming panic and instinct, he slowly turns around, completely ignoring the diary's warning. And what he sees is straight out of a nightmare. Standing in the corner is a tall, black figure. But it's not solid. Its body looks like living, swirling smoke. It has two glowing white eyes staring right through him. And then, its mouth stretches into an impossibly wide smile. That image completely breaks Mike's paralysis. He screams and he bolts for the door. As Mike sprints frantically through the pitch-black forest, it's like the environment itself is working against him. Branches are whipping and scratching his face. Tree roots are literally rising up to trip him. But the shadow? It just glides silently right behind him, completely unimpeded by the physical world. Every few seconds, Mike gives in to the sheer panic and glances back over his shoulder. And every single time he looks, the entity is right there. It's steadily closing the distance, and it isn't making a single sound. And then the psychological torture kicks into high gear. Overlapping whispers start surrounding him in the dark. It's not just chasing him physically anymore, it's hunting his mind, taunting him with things like, "You can't escape," and "Stay with us forever." It is actively feeding on the exact fear the diary warned about. Part 5. The False Sanctuary. Tears are streaming down his face. His energy is entirely depleted. But then, he sees them. The lights of his village in the distance. With one last, desperate burst of adrenaline, he races toward the nearest house and bursts across the forest's edge. And the second he crosses that boundary, the whispers stop, the shadow just vanishes. He collapses on the ground, completely exhausted. The villagers find him shaking and carry him home. For weeks, Mike is in a state of silent shock. He absolutely refuses to talk about what happened. But eventually, months go by, and life seems to go back to normal. The trauma gets buried. Or, so he thought. Because months later, the entire narrative flips when he suddenly wakes up in the middle of the night to a room there is just a little too quiet. Part 6. The Eternal Trap. See, escaping the physical boundary of the woods wasn't actually enough to break the curse. The safety of his bedroom was a total illusion. His blood turns cold. Because from underneath his own bed, literally the ultimate safe space for a child, that familiar, terrifying whisper calls his name again. The shadow hadn't given up at all. It just patiently waited for him to feel completely safe, just so it could maximize the sheer terror it was about to harvest. Mike violently yanks the blanket over his head. He's holding his breath, desperately trying to hide. But the voice moves. It's suddenly right beside his ear, and it asks this incredibly unsettling question. Why did you leave me alone in the forest? It's pure psychological manipulation. And then Mike feels icy fingers physically touch his shoulder. The barrier between whatever that shadow is and the real world is totally gone. When the sun comes up the next morning, 13-year-old Mike is gone. The room is completely empty, and he is never seen again. This is where you see the shadow's real power, its immense patience. It didn't need to drag him into the dark that first night. The trap was permanently set the exact second Mike turned around in that cabin. And here is the truly horrifying twist of how this local folklore sustains itself. The legend actually evolved. That original voice in the wind that lured Mike out into the dark, well, now it's Mike's own voice. He is eternally trapped in that darkness, whispering "help me" to any new travelers who happen to pass by. He literally became the very legend he refused to believe in. It is a masterful explainer on respecting local warnings, right? It perfectly breaks down the anatomy of a horror narrative, showing exactly how skepticism, when stripped of caution, can be a fatal flaw. So I'll leave you with this one final, chilling thought to ponder the next time you find yourself wandering a little too close to the woods at sunset. If you hear a faint voice in the dark asking for help, knowing what you know now, will you follow it?